Good morning, everybody. It is day 97 of spiritual healthcare. So welcome to all of you. I hope you guys are having a really, really great morning. It is very sunny and very, very windy here in Edmonton. So I hope you guys are having a really good day. It's good to see everyone. And today we're tackling a very interesting subject in regards to the paranormal. Actually, two very interesting subjects that I think is going to move us. Hopefully the discussion will move us forward. In regards to paranormal groups and research and cooperation and things like that, as well as taking a really good look at how the pandemic is going to affect investigations. So lots to talk about today. Good morning to Ed and Patricia. Nice to see you guys. Nice to see everyone. As I say, I hope you guys are. I hope everybody's weather has kind of at least started to settle down. Well, I'd say we're very windy here this morning, so I don't know. We were really windy yesterday, too. I don't know what's going on. So good morning to everybody. Good morning to Sally. Nice to see you. I hope you guys are the heat wave in Texas is settling out a little bit. Good morning to Lucy. Hey, how are you? It's good to see everybody. And so today we're going to be talking about two, I think, really important things today, which is what this whole movement and everything means for paranormal research and researchers in terms of the very sort of controversial Paranormal Unity movement that's been going on over the last, I'd say, I don't know, it's been about 10 years or so, as well as talking about the impacts of COVID-19 on research and investigations, because everything's going to change. Right? Everything's going to change going forward in dealing with people and dealing with homes, dealing with all sorts of stuff. So we got lots to chat about today, and I think it's going to be really good. Good morning to Brandy and Shadow. Nice to see you guys. This is going to be really interesting. Some very, very good questions that have come in over the last couple of days, and I'm looking forward to getting into it because the controversy of things like Paranormal Unity, I think, is definitely going to be challenged going forward, especially with Black Lives Matter movement that's been going on. So I think there's a lot of things that are under the microscope right now, and a lot of things that we're going to have to move on and consider and change. And as the world is evolving, and we got to move with it. We got to go with that flow and evolve. So it's going to be really important. So good morning to everyone, and I hope you guys have had we had a great Monday. I had a pretty good Monday as well. It was a kind of a weird day. It was busy and whatnot. Got lots done, and it was really good. We got some bizarre periodic rain here too, so I don't know. But yeah, I'm looking forward to. So post your comments about how you guys feel about the idea of things like Paranormal Unity and things like that in the comments today. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can, and because I really think this is a really great discussion to start having, and we'll get to that later on. So as they feel free to post comments and all of that stuff, because I think what we have defined in our culture as unity, and oftentimes what comes forward from movements like that becomes almost like a false sense and a false face in a way, where there's things that are going that are being slipped under the rug, and then this sort of face gets stamped up in front that says, everybody's unified, and we all know, everybody knows in the field that that's just not true. So I think there's lots to dig into here. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, though, was a question that came in yesterday from a group in North Carolina, and I really love this because I think this is something that's going to affect us as both clients and as investigators moving forward. And I think we've got to start thinking about it now on a couple of different levels. So the question was, due to COVID-19, how are you planning on going about investigations differently, and do you think it's going to change? And I think I think this is a great question. I think this is on everybody's minds. And investigations don't just mean into people's homes. We're talking about people, like places that are maybe businesses and things like that. And are we going to start requiring new guidelines and things like that in order to move into these places and do our work? So yeah, I think we're going to definitely see a change. We've seen a change already. Interestingly enough, where I've noticed a change specifically has been with some of the type of clients that we're getting and some of the mental health reasons behind the calls. And I think this is something we really have to take a good look at, because when we're moving forward into this new arena, we're not just moving forward into an arena that's going on that has a pandemic in it, but we're also moving into an arena where people are now having different sorts of problems, and maybe heightened problems than they were previously. So it's not just about the safety as to what we're doing in terms of, are we wearing our masks? Are we, washing our hands and the physical safety precautions? But I think we have to take a hard look at the mental health repercussions as well. When we start to look at some of the calls, like I know that have been coming in, for me and as well as other investigators and things like that, what I've noticed is that there's a lot more incidents of mental illness and depression. So for example, I had a call come in. This was early on in when the pandemic first really started ramping up. I had a call come in from an investigator in Calgary who's dealing with a client who firmly believed that he was possessed, but he also believed that his blood was the cure for COVID-19, and it was clearly a mental health issue and whatnot. So we had to figure out how we were going to get a hold of the proper authorities so that they could step in and deal with it. So I think what we're going to see, in just based on my general opinion, is I think we're going to see a heightened spike in cases. I think that's going to happen because more people are at home. We know more people are actually reporting this stuff. They're actually reporting paranormal activity more often because they are at home. They've got nothing else to do, right? So we know that's happening, and we also know that when we see this spike in paranormal activity, especially some of the negative stuff, we know that we've got people who are kind of resonating with that negative side of the emotional scale, right? So there's a lot of new mental health problems and things like that are cropping up due to COVID-19. So I think as we move forward as researchers and investigators, we have to start taking this into account as well, and start to pay attention to exactly what it is that is our as I say, what is our new arena. We've got to be able to start define it, start to make sense out of it, and as we go into research, understand that the research groups that we had prior are not going to be mentally the same. They just aren't. Our clients are now dealing with different problems. We've got a different set of problems. It's a big deal. So apart from, as I say, I think this is a great question. Do we treat investigations and research the same? We can't. We just can't. We've been dealt a new set of cards, so we have to be able to look at this in a new way. I think when it comes to parapsychological research, we have to remember that the word psychology is in there. That's in there. So when we've got a different arena of circumstances that are coming up, we have to be able to understand the circumstances in order to turn around and begin to help the people that are involved. So without that, we're going to run ourselves into some trouble. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, when we have a brand new, unprecedented set of circumstances like this, we have to redo how we're doing things. So the other question that I got recently, which I thought was really good, and this is what I wanted to really delve into today, was the idea of this sort of phrase, this hashtag phrase that's been going around called Paranormal Unity. And it's been going around for about 10 years. This is not a new concept. I mean, probably a million of you have heard of it. For those of you who have not heard of it, basically the premise is to make this field more inclusive to everybody, right? To everyone. And I think originally when it first came out, it was the idea that, a lot of teams and whatnot, they're very cliquey. A lot of the sort of the amateur teams, very cliquey, very, everybody thinks it's a big race to get somewhere with this stuff and whatever. And so the idea of it came about because they wanted to sort of unify, like everybody's got the same goal, we should be moving forward together and helping each other. But the problem that has cropped up with, it's twofold really with the idea of paranormal unity, which is, first of all, I think with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that, I think the field is beginning to really start to understand that it is not as diverse as what we would like to think it is. In terms of people of color that are prominent in the field, where is, their research, where are their faces on TV, and things like that. We don't really see much of it. So we've got that side of it, but we also have this other side of it where this blanket term of paranormal unity has almost become a bit of a false front in a way, where the idea is very nice, but oftentimes the people that are using this hashtag are also the ones that it's almost like a false positivity in a way. So we get a wide range of people, I think, that are using this hashtag or this almost catchphrase as this idea that if, as long as we're saying it, as long as we put that out there, then that we're going to be inclusive. And I think this is something we really have to take a hard look at, because unity in and of itself does not mean that everybody is necessarily looking at the same goal, first of all, okay? So oftentimes we start to think that this is, paranormal unity is about everybody's going for the same thing, we should all be helping each other, and we might not all be going for the same thing. I don't do the same thing, for example, that the people on, maybe Ghost Hunters would do, or, we might disagree with methodology, we might disagree with end goals and end games and things like that. That's not a thing, but that's not necessarily something that is necessarily going to happen. But I think the core idea that we are all working towards something that is adding to the world, contribute. Again, it comes back to the whole: are you contributing or contaminating your world, your environment, this field? We have to start asking those big questions, and if we're asking those questions in a really solid way, and on a very fundamental level, you can kind of begin to isolate whether or not you're behind this idea of paranormal unity, or whether you're using it as sort of a blanket term. But my concern is, as I say, with the concept, is that we're getting into this realm now where it's almost becoming, as I say, almost like this false positivity. We see it a little bit with certain forms of, or certain people that are trying to be really spiritual, where everything has to be positive, and if you're not being positive, then you're being, you're being a problem, or, you're not being spiritual or something like this, when, that is just not, the idea of being, happy and joyful and positive all the time is not, it's just beyond the goal. It's not the goal. The goal is to be able to feel and heal and deal with your stuff in order to get to the happy and the joy and whatnot. So you've got to have that contrast, and embracing the shadow, as Carl Jung would have said, right? Embracing the shadow. So I think this is part of the problem with some of this paranormal unity stuff, is that we failed at some point with it to embrace some of that shadow side of paranormal investigation and research. And we have to be very, very, very careful about how we're using that phrase of things like paranormal unity. Supporting each other. Definitely, there's people who have been in this field for a while. How much backstabbing there is. I had an incident a number of years ago. I've had with quite a number of teams over the years, which is one of the reasons why I have contracted people now. I don't have a set team anymore. I literally have contracted people now, because the problem is when you get into this field of research, two things can end up happening, at least in my experience, that have perpetuated issues within groups, as well as within the circle of multiple groups in a city or anything like that. And that is, number one, the people who are allowing their ego to get involved. They're allowing their ego to step in, so as soon as there comes either press attention or attention from maybe it could just be other clients, maybe it could be news, maybe it doesn't matter, whatever that person's currency is. And the goal starts to get shifted. It goes from the person helping other people and being of service to feeding an ego or an egoic perspective where they are almost becoming a bit of a star, and they're getting that attention. And it might not be something where they're on television. It could just be something where they're on, they're receiving attention from people around them and things like that. So you have to be really careful. I think we have to be very conscious and very careful of that aspect of things. So there's that. But I think the other aspect of this, when it comes to Paranormal Unity, is when people start to sort of fall off the wagon a little bit in terms of mental health. I've seen this as well happen, where the line between their reality and what they're experiencing in their world and their mental health starts to tip. And, it's a very fine line, of course, in especially with paranormal research, right? Because when we're dealing with phenomenon that often has been labeled as, if you experience this, then you're crazy, right? You're crazy. But there is a line. There is a line, and we have to be very conscious of what that line is. And when we start to see somebody that's kind of tipping over the edge, that's going over the edge in a direction that does not seem healthy, then that becomes a problem. And I think one of the best definitions of whether or not something is normal, which actually came from Dr. Phil, when he had said that defining normal is really a function of whether or not it inhibits your life. And I think that's a really great definition. Is it actually contaminating your life and your experience? Is it damaging your relationships? Is it damaging your job, or endangering your home, or endangering you, or whatever that is? If that's happening, then that behavior is not normal. So I think, and I think that's a really great definition for the world of paranormal research, because normal, when we move into this arena, what the hell is normal, right? I mean, we have some pretty weird standards of normal in the paranormal research field. Whether you're on the academic side or whether you're on, the more field research side, we end up with a pretty weird variety of normal. So I think we have to be really careful. So Kaz is saying, they want fame and notoriety. Yeah, I think, a lot of people get into this thinking that it's going to be like a very attention-getting, glamorous thing to do. It's a hip thing to do. As the television has made it more popular. I mean, Travel Channel and T&E Network basically are almost entirely paranormal shows. Now I think that's basically what they do, right? So it's become a big thing. Marge is saying, I've seen it on a certain paranormal show. The women, husband, and their kid were obviously off and lying about what supposedly happened. Yeah, it's really crazy, when I think when you get a situation where you have, if you've got dishonest producers or you've got dishonest network or anything like that, we have to remember that people like that, their main goals is to just turn out ratings and entertainment. They're not looking for factual evidence, nor do they usually care what happens to the family later. So the follow-ups, whether or not those are done, is hard. It's hit and miss. It's really hard to say, because they really are looking to turn out a product. Which is it's a really, really big difference. So I know, like, for myself, I'm very careful about which paranormal shows I take on, because, I look for that very, very strongly. It was about 15 years ago, I got offered a show on Destination America, and to host this show on Destination America. And the producers of the show, they were basically deciding between me and this other fellow. And I basically told them that, I would be happy to do it, but I said, I'm not willing to fake anything. I'm not going to do it. Like, that's not what I've built EntitySeeker on. That's not what Steph would have wanted. And I'm not willing to do that. And that's what made them decide on the other person, because I wasn't willing to fake it. So we have to be, be aware of it. And I've been really, I've been really careful about what I've tried to put out there in terms of my opinions and whatever, and make sure that you guys are getting the most honest the most honest feedback, at least from me that I can give you in my honest opinions about stuff. Sally is saying that she misses a haunting. Yeah, a haunting. It was it's such a fantastic show. And it was so great to work on. And what was so great about that, at least my experience on it, was that they were so detail oriented. I can't even tell you guys how many hours and hours and hours I spent on the phone with the producers before they even flew to Edmonton. Between Stephanie and myself, I don't know how many, it had to have been a week's worth of hours on the phone with them. They were trying to get angles right. What did you see? How did you see it? Can you draw it out so we can film this correctly? And the hours, by the time we got and sat down for the interview process, it was about like a 9-hour interview process. It was really amazing. And, it was exhausting, but man, I was happy to do it because I knew what was coming out was going to be accurate. They only got like one thing wrong on the show too, which is really cool. And Kaz is saying, it's funny, I was just telling someone that I will never get interviewed about my experiences because they were not scary. Yeah, and there's the other part of it as well. When we get into this stuff, is that often they want the most frightening things, or they want to spin it in a very frightening way, and I think it defeats the purpose for me of honoring the story. And I think there's a misnomer about paranormal activity, that people, I think producers often think that they only want to see, scary things, and that hasn't been my experience. I've found that the people that attend the classrooms and my live shows and things like that, they are more than happy to hear about the wonderful things as much as they want to hear about the scary things. And I think it's a bit of a misnomer in a lot of producers' heads, is what they think, that everything has to be terrifying, and it really doesn't. People are more than happy to experience and hear about the positive stuff as well. It's really, really interesting. We've had it was this past interview that I did on Coast to Coast. I was reading some of the comments on their ad for my show right before it aired. It was about, I don't know, an hour before it aired. And what was interesting was that there was a fellow that was on before me talking about like the sort of the revelations and the end of the world, and in relation to the pandemic and the correlation between like biblical scriptures and what was going on, a whole bunch of things, who was on prior to me, and then I was the second half of the show. And what was interesting was that there were people that were on the thread that were saying, that's too doom and gloom, I want to hear the positive stuff, I'll listen to the second half. So I think producers really need to take a hard look at that, because I think especially now in this day and age, we're getting so bombarded with a lot of the negative that's coming in. People are seeking out that positivity. So I think we have to pay attention. We have to pay attention to that. But I think when it comes to Paranormal Unity, it's bringing up some massive questions, is that it's not about something scary. It can be about something that is really positive. And when it comes to the unity side of it, we have to begin to realize that there's aspects of what unity looks like that might not look like what you think it does. We have to begin to understand that unity is a respect-based premise, not you think like me or you agree with me premise. And I think that's where people get screwed up. We have to start looking at the idea of, as I say, diversity. Somebody was mentioning Ghost Hunters. It was the first time they saw diversity on paranormal television. Yeah, it's a big problem. Just certain cultures, certain groups, they're not represented. You try to find different stories and things like that, even of certain locations in the world, and you're hard pressed to find them. You're really hard pressed to find them, and part of that is how they view it, of course, but. I think it's very important that we start taking things a little more seriously. One of the areas that I see this in frequently, and it's getting a little bit better, is within the First Nations groups, where we tend to hear their paranormal stories and we brush it off as folklore immediately. They have these encounters that seem just incredible, and for me, I've found there's great levels of truth in what they're saying. And I've had some pretty amazing experiences in regards to that, and yet it tends to get brushed off as, oh yeah, but that's First Nations folklore. So there's a lot we have to start to open our minds. We have to start to open our hearts and think different. As we're moving forward, and begin to understand that this is a respect-based perspective. It doesn't have to be I agree with you. And I think that's where the line with Paranormal Unity gets going. I just want to go back to some of the comments here. Your comments, you guys, are really good. Linda was saying it'll be easier to be on the same page when we find commonality with how we communicate and interpret symbols. As we individually grow in our spirituality, it will become easier to be unified. Yeah, and I think, the communication side of it, I think, is so important. And as I say, and realizing that we are not, even the symbolism, it might end up different. It might be different. The other day when, on Friday, I had Galen, my Python, he was co-hosting. He'll be co-hosting again this week at some point. But he was, and I used the example with him where, he can switch his vision between two different modes of vision, his infrared sight and regular sight. And he can move between these two modes of vision. Like he's like a superhero, and, he can smell or taste smell and all of these different things. So, even though he's got a different way of interpreting the world, it doesn't make it wrong, number one, and it actually is far superior to people in most cases. He's got a unique insight into the world that we cannot imagine. We can't understand it. We can't imagine it. I can't imagine what that is like, to be able to switch between two different types of sight. I have no idea what that is like. And yet, that's an everyday thing for him. He can do that. So we have to really start to understand that everybody interprets and perceives the world and is translating the world through different means, and sees it very different. So that communication, that understanding, and realizing that, not everybody is you, and people will think different than you, which is hard for some people to get their head around, believe it or not. Well, you can believe it when you look at some of the crazy that's been going on, especially in some of the parts of the world right now. But when you look at some of the things that have been going on, the idea that somebody can think different and still get to the same point of view can be a completely foreign experience for people. It's really interesting. I've noticed that quite frequently, where, they think there is only one way to a certain thing, and it turns out, lo and behold, you've got all of these people that have taken all these different journeys, and those different journeys have led them to maybe a different understanding of it, but, the sort of the same ideas or the same goals. So we can't pigeonhole ourselves into certain ways of thinking, or thinking that we're right about stuff. I wanted to read a little bit of an excerpt from Faith in the Valley today, because there's an excerpt in here that I thought was really, really relevant to this idea. And this is, of course, by Ian Van Zandt, for the people who are new. This is such a great book, you guys. All of her stuff is amazing. But check this out. I think this is so relevant. What does meet me halfway really mean? When we get halfway, what are we going to do? What lies ahead of us? Who's going to take the first step beyond the halfway point? When someone tells you, I'm here for you, or I'll be there for you, what are they talking about? What are you doing there when I'm over here? One of the biggest problems that we face in our relationships is the failure to communicate effectively. We often say things knowing what we mean, but without a clear understanding of what the other person has in mind. One of the hindrances to effective communication in a relationship of any kind is the fear that we will ask for too much. We may also be afraid that the other person is unable or unwilling to deliver what we want and need. In the end, you are over here when they are over there, or their half adds up to only 1/3 of yours. The only way to build a strong, stable, mutually satisfying relationship is to be clear. Never be afraid to ask, what do you mean? Always be willing to admit, this is not what I had in mind. Until we make a commitment to communicate clearly and effectively, we will be halfway there with nothing happening here. And I think that is just I think it's beyond true. It's beyond accurate. It's beyond true. And Marge is saying, I like to sit back when something happens and figure out why this happened to me at this time and place. Absolutely. It's, it's so crucial to be able to do that and be able to sit back and ask what's going on and why. Linda's saying tools can make, can be, to read the frequencies that we are not born with. Yeah, exactly. It's being able to start to understand, that we are not the hub of perception in the world. we just aren't. We just aren't. And to be able to sit back and understand that, it humbles us a little bit. And Linda's also saying, comparing notes is helpful. Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to be open to those other person's notes and not be a right fighter. There's the other part of it, is don't be that right fighter, because that can be a big problem too. So many people, I think, are hung up on they got to be right. Their perspective or their research or whatever has got to be the right thing. And you got to be willing to be wrong. You got to be willing to be wrong, and you got to be willing to say, I don't know, and be okay with not knowing, because that's a big part of it as well. Is being okay with not knowing, being okay with being able to retract your position when evidence is placed in front of you and you're told, no, this is actually incorrect, and being aware enough to know when to stop talking. Because there's that too, people, when we watch that on television often, where you'll get people who just don't know when to stop talking. And I think you guys are totally right. We are doing a great thing by supporting each other in the field, and we have to, we just have to. And it's not even about the field, it's about being able to come at that from a very strong perspective, and in life in general, and being able to turn around when somebody is, you're seeing something go on that is not right. Somebody, maybe in the field is, I don't know, being racist or being, just a general jerk, to be able to step in and say, what, this behavior is not acceptable. And I think that's what, Ayan was saying in that passage as well, is to be able to turn around. And part of the support is to turn around and say, no, you actually don't get to do that. That's not acceptable with me. You don't get to do that. And to set the standard as to, when we're seeing things like racism going on, when we're seeing things like, that level of bullying or cattiness or anything like that, is just to be able to say, you don't get to do this with me. You don't get to do this in my space. And I think that's a big deal. And let me tell you, it's an even bigger deal to the people who are getting, bullied and harassed or whatever is going on. I have a colleague, in the field who is, she's great. She's a great teacher. She's really good at what she does. And, she was putting up with that online for a while, where she had, trolls that were basically other researchers that were just coming at her. And, it was absolutely ridiculous. And what was nice to see was the amount of people that rallied around. There was about 4 people who were kind of doing this trolling business, and the group of people that just instantly rallied around and was just like, no, you guys don't get to do this anymore. And it was really cool to watch. And I think a lot of the things that are happening with these movements, like, as I say, like Black Lives Matter and things like that, is that people are coming forward and they're more willing to take that stand and go, no, we're not doing this anymore. That was then, this is now. We're not doing this anymore. This is, we're going to do it different. And if you are going to do it the same, that's cool, but you're not going to do it here. So we got to do it different. We've got to take a hard look and do it different. And the way we start is not in policing others. It's policing ourselves, and starting to change our boundaries, our methodologies, our approach to other people in the field, and we move forward from that point. So I think that's what we got. It's what we got to do. So everybody, we got to do our peace affirmations before we go. So everybody, take a breath. I am a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I'm able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. And everybody take a breath. And Brandy was just saying here, when she was in high school, she was glad to move on to the adult world where people act like adults. I was in for a rude awakening when those cliques were still there. I can totally 100% relate to that, Brandy. It's, you know, you get told, I think, through high school, especially people like us, you know, who were bullied and whatnot. I think we get told through high school that, you know, it's like, okay, well, once you get out of high school, the bullying stops. And that's not always the case at all, depending on what the issue is. So, yeah, absolutely. Like, and it really becomes, you realize that you can't rely on the outer environment to do the work for you. You know, you can't rely on that. You have to do the work. The work is the internal stuff. And that's the shift, because I think you're told once adults become adults, then that stuff goes away. And that's just not true. You know, dysfunctional kids with disrupted inner cores, they grow up to be dysfunctional adults with disrupted cores, right? If there's no intervention, if there's no change. So, you know, those people they get taller and they get older, but, the behavior is still there. Marta's saying that jealousy is a bully too. I've found, honestly, that jealousy is the number one bully. 100%. That has been the amount of people who I know in my life who have been, who have fallen into that pit, that hole, has been vast. And it's usually, and this is the mistake I think a lot of people make, it's usually people that are closer to you that will be the problem. It's not usually the people who are distant. You know, you get the odd, and people think, you know, if you're a public figure, then it's going to be the general public and the trolls and stuff like that. And it's usually not. It's usually the people close to you. It's very interesting. So I hope you guys have an awesome Tuesday. Lots to do today. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning, as always, you guys. Thank you so much for everything you guys do. Please keep sending in questions, because you guys make this happen every day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you guys have an amazing day today. Have lots of peace, lots of joy, all of those things. And I will see you guys tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Spiritual Healthcare. Bye, everybody.